So as has already been introduced, my name's Christie Allan and I'm here as co-chair of the Victorian and Tasmanian Youth Cancer Advisory Board. And I'll be presenting to you today on the engagement of young people in informing, designing and building the future of adolescent and young adult care. And this is a youth participation initiative on behalf of the Victorian and Tasmanian Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Service. So before I go into the formal component of my presentation, I thought I'd preface it with a little bit of a background on my own personal cancer experience as a young adult. So when I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had no obvious symptoms of disease other than a lump on my neck, slight weight loss and a rash on my leg, which at the time could have all been attributed to either an infection or stress. And really echoing what Simon said this morning about it being sort of the last thing that was on my mind, my GP's mind and my family's mind, my diagnosis truly came as a shock. Fortunately though, following what seems like a plethora of blood tests, scans and cycles upon cycles of ABD chemotherapy, plus a full head of hair as you would have seen, I'm now in remission for my cancer and have been for 4 or so years. While the physical impacts of my cancer diagnosis were kept to a minimum and I only experienced minor nausea and now ongoing fatigue, one of the lucky ones, it was the social and emotional impacts that took a toll on my experience. In a time where I strived for autonomy and independence, where I felt confident in my relationships with family and friends, and in my trajectory through education and employment, my diagnosis felt like an earthquake. And even now in survivorship, I still feel the aftershock. Like most people diagnosed my age, I was treated in the adult hospital. While I don't think negatively of my treatment or the people I shared it with, I definitely think it would have been improved by age-appropriate environments, the ability to meet other young people, and have access to healthcare professionals who truly understand the needs of adolescents and young adult patients. Each year, around 1,000 other young people aged between 15 and 25 years are diagnosed with cancer in Australia. Each of these young people, like me, face challenges beyond the physical impacts of a cancer diagnosis, including issues related to fertility, identity development, their independence, in their relationships with family and friends, in their education and employment, and through loss of productivity, purpose and income for not only the young person but their parents as well. In a recent article, it was estimated that the lifetime cost of a cancer diagnosis in this age group equated to $1.3 million. And if I'd seen this figure in context of tax lotto, I would have been rubbing my hands together and planning my next overseas trip. However, when learning that this was the cost of my diagnosis, it was alarming because I realised that these expenses were not just treatment related, but they were as a result of the additional impacts faced by people within this age group as a result of the intersection of their diagnosis with their development, and also the ongoing burden of disease that we may experience later in life. Also, until recently, sorry, I've gone ahead too quickly, this age group have been overlooked in oncology practice, and this trend remains consistent in social and health policy contexts. So as I mentioned, I'm here today to discuss mechanisms for engagement and participation of young people in improving the care of those in future. And I believe that this is truly a method that we can ensure that adolescents and young adults are no longer overlooked in health and social policy contexts. And you can see my presentation outline on the slide. So firstly, what is youth participation? Well, youth participation is the active engagement of young people in decision-making processes and issues that affect them. In oncology practice, this includes the treatment, services and experiences that guide our care. It is embedded by 3 principles of empowerment, so allowing young people to have greater control over their lives and through participation, through purposeful engagement, the ability for young people to take on valued roles and address issues that are relevant to them, as well as influence real outcomes, and inclusiveness, so ensuring that all young people are able to participate, they are able to achieve empowerment, and they are able to achieve purposeful engagement. Really, and I've put these quotes on the slide, behind me, I think it is about recognising that youth engagement is a force for change and accountability, and embedding a nothing about us without us attitude to the delivery of patient-centred care. So, examples of youth participation include allowing a young person to come and present at a conference, being consulted on their ideas and their opinions, being given the opportunity to research issues related to them and their health, in the planning or leading of community activities and events, participating in youth committees or groups such as the Victorian and Tasmanian Youth Cancer Advisory Board, which I've alluded to, and being involved in decision-making bodies. And all in all, the delivery of these opportunities should be done in a way that isn't tokenistic or passive. So why youth participation? Well, firstly, youth participation is a basic human right. As stated in the United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child, children and young people have the right to express their own views freely, the right to freedom of expression, and the right to participate freely in cultural and social life. Youth participation offers marginalised young people with an opportunity of having greater control and more power in their lives, the feeling of empowerment. Youth participation also provides a platform for increased service efficiency, so making services for young people more relevant and cost-effective. And positive youth participation supports young people in their endeavour to successfully traverse the road to adulthood and beyond, and to realise their full potential and then act on it. So as co-chair of the Victorian and Tasmanian Youth Cancer Advisory Board for the past 2 years and member for 3 years prior to that, I've witnessed firsthand what effective youth participation can produce. Established in 2010 by On Track at Peter Mac, Victorian Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Service, which I will shorten to On Track today, YCAB is comprised, or the Youth Cancer Advisory Board, YCAB, is comprised of 12 demographically, diagnostically and experientially diverse young people who have all experienced a diagnosis of cancer between the age of 15 and 25 years. We represent the voices of young people across Victoria and Tasmania, taking our roles as champions in the delivery of a youth cancer advocacy agenda and the improvement of services for other young people affected by cancer seriously. During my time on the board, we have made great strides in the way care is delivered to other young people affected by cancer. And some of our achievements include, but are definitely not limited to, the development and design of a youth cancer centre at the Victorian Comprehensive Cancer Centre, which if you've not had the opportunity to go look at, I definitely encourage you do. The production of various position papers relating to improved access to clinical trials, fertility preservation services, and improved care for LGBTIQ+ young people affected by cancer. The introduction of a postgraduate course at Melbourne University looking at adolescent and young adult care within oncology streams and also outside of that oncology context. The publication of resources and guides to education and employment, general practice and survivorship. The development of nurse modules within the Western Central Metropolitan Integrated Cancer Service region. And now, engagement in the development of mechanisms that improve youth participation, or a youth participation framework. While YCAB is an effective model for youth participation at the local level, we do have our limitations, and that is that we currently have a capped number of participants or diversity of voices that can be heard through this group. Each year that I've been co-chair on the board and participated in the interview process, we have had more applicants than spaces on the board, which indicates that there is demand for a more inclusive model than YCAB. For these young people who are turned away, rejection can be disheartening, especially since all the applicants are incredibly capable and committed young people. And really, the only reason they're being turned away is because of issues of representation on the board, say we may have more women than men, and the availability of positions on the board as well. While we do currently have a broader consulting group which we refer these patients to, engagement with and of this group is not effective at this stage. More channels for participation are needed to cater for these young people and for the other young people who wish to engage but to a lesser capacity than what is involved in a board. So recognising the limitations of the Youth Cancer Advisory Board, or YCAB, On Track at Peter Mac are taking the next steps in leading the development of new mechanisms for the participation of young people in their care. In doing this, On Track are prioritising the delivery of youth-friendly, safe, supported and informed care for all young people affected by cancer. They are demonstrating their accountability to this group of young people. They hope to grow engagement with young people and provide different mechanisms for their participation. We want to hear more and a greater diversity of voices, inform current and future strategic directions, and influence the provision of quality cancer care. So together, we have developed a model for participation called Youth Cancer Action. Youth Cancer Action is a diverse, youth-led community of young people from Victoria and Tasmania with a personal experience of cancer, who actively engage in informing, designing and building the future of adolescent and young adult cancer care, hence the presentation title. Together, we believe that youth participation is a fundamental right and a force for positive change and accountability. In establishing Youth Cancer Action as a model for active participation of young people, our mission is to ensure that every young person who is affected by cancer has access to youth-friendly, equitable and quality care throughout the spectrum of their diagnosis and well into survivorship. And that every young person affected by cancer has the opportunity to realise their full potential and actively participate in education, work and the community. And our values are respect, inclusion, community and advocacy. So in the planning and development of Youth Cancer Action, we really strive to practice what we preach. And in doing this, we employed an active process for youth participation through engagement and gathering of feedback of young people in workshops, routine consultations and through a youth working group. We modelled Youth Cancer Action on the best practice framework for youth engagement, recognising that the foundations for effective youth engagement include appropriate access to training and mentorship, adult partners and enabling systems and resources. Further, the active and meaningful engagement of young people in building and designing the future cancer care will influence policies, systems and services, as well as contribute to the growth of young people and their capacities, going some way toward closing the gap that was caused by their cancer experience. Ultimately, this practice will lead to the creation of health capital at the system, professional and personal level. At the system level, this includes transformation of traditional models of care into youth-friendly models of care. At the professional level, this includes an increased awareness, insight and capacity to connect to young people and provide confidential, non-judgmental and respectful youth-friendly care. And for the young person, this includes improved wellbeing across their life course, improved self-confidence, leadership, interpersonal skills, increased aspirations and decreased disconnection from education and work, increased opportunities to build life and work skills, decreased health risk behaviours, social and emotional development, access to peer support, and something that rings true to my own experience and participation is the ability to create meaning from an experience of cancer. So as was alluded to in my brief bio at the beginning of the presentation, something that I didn't mention earlier is that I recently completed a thesis looking at the primary care engagement of adolescent and young adult cancer patients with a GP. And now I work at Cancer Council Victoria with the aim of improving patient access to clinical trials and building trial site capacity in Victoria. If I had not been diagnosed with cancer and had not consequently had the access to the support and services provided through On Track at Peter Mac and in particular the Youth Cancer Advisory Board, it is unlikely that I'd be working in the same capacity and with the same drive as what I do now. Through these networks, I've developed a purpose, my confidence has increased, and my professional skills have developed beyond what I believe they could have through a traditional university degree. So the second core component of Youth Cancer Action is the tiered approach to youth participation, whereby young people are engaged in a range of ways according to their needs and preferences for associated information, training and support. recognising as well that these may fluctuate and allowing for movement between the different levels of the model. So these different levels include the community, representing a group of young people who are aware of youth cancer action but who may or may not choose to participate. The community, representing an informed group of young people who engage and participate to the mode and extent that they wish. The network, representing an informed group of young people who engage and participate a little bit beyond that of, the advocates who take on a formal and informal role as representatives or collaborators within the framework, and responsibilities of these young people extending to representations on committees, working groups, involvement in projects as liaison, advisor or team member, and active dialogue with health professionals and decision makers. And the board, representing a group of young people who oversee youth participation, strategy, implementation and further development, develop advocacy platforms and agendas, act as a primary contact for services like On Track at Peter Mac, and are a leader in the youth participation space within the oncology context and beyond the oncology context as well. And the final critical component of the Youth Cancer Action Model, which has been developed to ensure that the framework's implementation is truly youth-led and supported, is a youth participation internship, which will be offered to a young person who has had a personal experience of cancer and will allow this young person an additional opportunity for growth and development beyond Youth Cancer Action Board. Responsibilities of this person include, but again are not limited to, the implementation of a communication strategy for youth cancer action, the recruitment and liaison of youth participation network members, providing executive support to the board, and in the administration, data collection and reporting of youth cancer action outcomes and activities. As with every framework, we do not intend on this sitting on a shelf and gathering dust. And so, in order to set it up for success, we've developed a comprehensive business plan to support effective implementation of each component and to ensure that there is adequate support and resourcing in place for all young people who are involved. An overview of the different stages of the business plan, a very brief overview, is on the screen just to the right of me. However, I will not be going into huge depth about this business plan today, and if you would like to know more, I encourage you to contact Kate Thompson, who's the program manager, and Kate's just looked at me with a shocked face, who is the program manager at On Track at Peter Mac Victorian Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Service, and whose contact details are on the last slide. So as this is the Survivorship conference, I felt that I should include a brief slide on why I think youth cancer action reflects survivorship throughout its model. Well, firstly, Cancer Australia have acknowledged that including consumers in the involvement of person-centred care is a key principle of cancer survivorship, and this includes youth participation. In addition to that, I believe that survivorship is reflected throughout our model in who we are, in our mission, and in our vision, which is to ensure every young person is able to realise their full potential and return to work, education and the community, as is our focus in a lot of our survivorship practice, returning that person to, I guess, a normal quality of life or having a better quality of life. So, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, my cancer diagnosis felt a bit like an earthquake. It's funny how in such a short period of time and through the opportunities that I've had to actively participate through YCAB as a collective and on my own as an individual, my experience of an earthquake has transformed into a youthquake. So that is a significant cultural, political or social change that has arisen from actions or influences of young people. It's also Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year in 2017. And while I've never heard of it before, and I've never used it before, I do think it's fitting for this presentation. So my involvement in YCAB and the ongoing opportunities that I've had to actively participate have significantly impacted on my cancer experience turning something that was destructive for me personally into something that I now associate as being a key moment in my life for mostly positive reasons. It has been imperative to my increased quality of life as a survivor and has redirected my opportunities and outlooks in life as well. So why not allow others to experience this? For more information about Youth Cancer Action, as I mentioned, you can contact Kate Thompson, who is Program Manager of On Track at Peter Mac, Victorian Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Service. And I'd also like to thank the Department of Health and Human Services for their ongoing commitment to youth participation and the funding of this project, as well as Alison Coughlin, who's sitting in the audience, who was instrumental to the development and design of Youth Cancer Action in collaboration with the working group, which includes Maisie Stratford-Hutchings, Samuel Simmons, and also Lauren Meekus. Thank you.